That is a good cup of tea. Today we're going to be talking about Steadicams and how one can get the smoothest shot out of one. First, let's get rid of this. Roll the clip. So the first thing you're going to want to do, I've got a camera here just to demonstrate with, is you want to shoot as wide as physically possible. So on this particular camera and lens setup, that is 18mm. But basically you want to shoot with as wide a lens as possible. This will kind of give you the smoothest shot. The other thing when it comes to camera and lens setup is make sure that you've got the lens stabilization turned on, and if you have it, in-body stabilization turned on as well. The other thing is you actually want to have a fairly heavy camera weight at the top. This here gives a little bit more mass to the actual full-on camera system, and that basically just makes you have a much smoother shot. So you want to have, especially if you've got something like this here, which is a fairly small camera. This is the Canon 650D. This is my previous camera to the one I'm using now, which is the Panasonic GH5. You want to make sure that you have something like a battery grip put onto the bottom. This will give you a heavier camera setup and will give you a much better picture. The next thing you're going to want to do is actually make sure that your glide cam is properly balanced. So right now this here is most certainly not balanced. So let's get this balanced. So first thing we're going to want to do is, well, because the Panasonic GH5 has a much heavier lens, we've actually got the camera push right back, because this is actually set up perfectly for the GH5. So what we're going to want to do is actually push the camera further forwards. Just loosen up these knobs on the side here and slide the camera forwards. Just basically get your basic center of gravity. So now that's way too far forwards. So just pushing this back until we've kind of got the center of gravity right. A little further back. Yeah, that's about right. And then you're going to basically adjust this here, adjust this one here, adjust down here. You're just going through all of them multiple times. So now, if you look at the camera, it is definitely falling over that way a great deal. So we're just going to pull that this way, just to get it kind of in balance. Left to right, that's much better. And again, we're going to have to push this further forwards. So as you can see, this here actually takes a fairly long amount of time to get it the first time. What I recommend doing, it's nearly there, is actually putting a quick release plate on the top of your glide cam. That way, every time you put your camera back onto it, it's in exactly the same position. The reason why this wasn't balanced straight away was because it was balanced out for the GH5. Okay, so the other thing you want to make sure is that you've got the right amount of weight at the bottom for the top. So you want approximately a 3-second drop time. 1, 2, a little bit too much. I want to push this just up a little bit more. Going to mess it up for the GH5 later. Okay, that's much better. Okay, so once you've got that, these two are lined up here. There we go. So once it's kind of balanced, you want to just double check your drop time. 1, 2, 3, and you should be able to, as long as it's actually properly balanced, move it around nicely, and your camera is barely moving. There's a slight bit of rotation there, but that's pretty much okay. So after you've done that, you're on to the next bit. which is how to actually use this. If you're right-handed, you want to get your right hand onto this gimbal section here. And basically, if this is shaking, that camera is not. So, all the weight of this camera system is going through your one hand through here. Your other hand, your left hand, is going to be used to start the camera rolling, adjust focus. You can actually adjust focus with your filming, and also to kind of point the camera in the correct direction. Now there are a couple of different ways of actually doing this. One way is to have your fingers right down here, and that's much more left, right, up, left and right adjustments. I tend to shoot with my hand right down here, which is slightly different, and it means you can actually get some more pushing, some more tilts, left and right. You can also do some Dutch angles if you want. So a Dutch angle is basically just like sideways, spinning it up. It's just called Dutch angle. And you're not grabbing onto this with this hand. No. Just gently touching it, holding it, making sure slight movements down there, and pushing it forwards and back. So the next thing you want to do is, as you're walking with the Glidecam, actually have a slight bend in your legs. This is the same as when shooting handheld. And what this does is it basically adds that extra axis, the up and down axis, of stabilization. So you've got that first shock absorber from the actual impact of putting your feet down. So how to shoot a low angle shot where you're actually getting the camera nice and close to the ground. So there are a couple of different ways of doing this. One which I use quite regularly is actually holding the handle here still, doing this here, and actually bending down and keeping the camera nice and close to the floor. The other way you can do is at the bottom here, putting your thumb and two fingers in there and actually holding the camera kind of like that. This is slightly less stable, but yeah, they both work really well. I find that actually doing this one here, where you hold it at the bottom here, actually works a lot better if you're actually running with it close to the ground. So the other thing you can do with Steadicams like this is some different transitions. So the one I use fairly regularly is actually a kind of a whip transition. Basically what you do is, as you're coming to the end of your first shot, you're just going to spin the camera off in any particular direction. This will basically give a large amount of motion blur, and in the next shot you're just going to whip it in to the next shot and carry on. Basically what this does is it gives you that kind of motion blur, and it makes it look like the camera's actually turning from one person to another person, or from one object to another scene, and it kind of gives it that seamless, continuous motion look. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. See you guys next time. Fidget spinner, by the way, in case you were wondering. How long can you do this for?